While sorting through my husband's belongings, I accidentally came across a bank transfer record and a photograph. That's when I learned that the man I had been married to, who had always been quiet and not good with words, had only ever loved one person, his first love, Sarah Lynn. To help raise her son, he had been transferring half of his monthly salary to her for years. And before he passed, he even left behind a will, stating that half of his assets should be unconditionally given to Sarah and her son. I hadn't even had time to feel shocked or grieve when Sarah barged into my home with her son, demanding that I share the house with them. The rage overwhelmed me, and I collapsed from a heart attack and died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I received my college acceptance letter. Emily Chen, congratulations on being accepted to Capital Medical University. The teacher announced with a warm smile. You're the first female student from our night school to be accepted into a university. We're all so proud of you. He patted my shoulder kindly. Study hard, Emily. Someday, you'll use your medical knowledge to help many people. I will, teacher. I won't let you down. I won't let down the country that's nurtured me, I replied firmly, emotion welling up in my chest. But, teacher, could I ask you not to tell anyone about this just yet? Why? He asked with a puzzled expression. I'm just afraid someone might try to steal my spot, I said, coming up with an excuse on the spot. The teacher understood immediately and agreed to keep it confidential. I clutched the acceptance letter tightly to my chest, as if I were holding on to my newfound hope. As I stepped out of the school, the autumn breeze brushed my cheeks, but it couldn't dispel the daze in my heart. Had I really come back to life? Memories from my past life surged through me like waves, resentment, injustice, helplessness. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I ran to the grove behind the school and cried my heart out. In my previous life, I gave up my college opportunity, my dreams, and even myself, all for Ethan Gu. I truly believed that my sacrifices would win me his sincerity. I thought that even if we didn't have a passionate, romantic love, we at least shared a respectful companionship. It wasn't until the truth was laid bare that I realized my past life had been a complete joke. That day, while organizing Ethan's things, I unexpectedly found a transfer record and a photo. On the list, the same amount had been sent every month to the same person, Sarah Lynn. In the photograph, Ethan was holding a little boy, and standing beside them was Sarah. The three of them were smiling, just like a happy little family. At that moment, my entire world collapsed. It turned out he had always only loved his first love. He had spent half his salary supporting another woman's child, while telling me to scrimp and save, to stop spending carelessly. He even left a will that gave half of his property to Sarah and her son. And I, the wife who had accompanied him for 50 years, was left with just one sentence: don't make things difficult for Sarah and her son. Before I could recover from the shock, Sarah stormed into my home with her son and daughter-in-law. Emily, you better pack up and move out. This house is ours now, Sarah snapped, her shrill voice still ringing in my ears to this day. Her son and daughter-in-law stood beside her with arrogance in their eyes, looking at me like I was nothing. Mom, why bother talking so much? Just throw her stuff out, her daughter-in-law yelled. You are. I was shaking with rage, my whole body trembling uncontrollably. Pain tore through my chest, my vision went dark, and I fell to the ground, dead. And now, unbelievably, I had returned to the day I received my college acceptance letter. I was beyond thrilled and excited. Since fate had given me another chance at life, I swore to myself I would never repeat the same mistakes. This time, I would live for myself. I would walk a path without Ethan Gu. The first thing I did after getting home was to put away my acceptance letter safely. In my past life, I had been so overjoyed when I received that letter. I couldn't wait to share the good news with Ethan, but he wasn't happy at all. In fact, he looked sorrowful. Emily, don't go to Capital, he said. Your family needs you. I need you. Back then, I thought he didn't want to be apart from me. I was deeply moved and foolishly gave up my dream of attending college. It's only now, after living that life once already, that I understand he didn't need me at all. He just needed someone to handle the household chores, someone to care for his aging parents. I looked at the calendar on the table. 1 more month. In one more month, I could finally leave this place and begin a brand new life. As I picked up the desk calendar, I unexpectedly found a sheet of paper pressed beneath it. I unfolded it and examined it carefully. My heart sank. It was the marriage report Ethan Gu was supposed to have submitted to the army. Hadn't he said it had already been turned in 6 months ago? Why was it still here? Then it hit me. 6 months ago was the day Sarah Lynn arrived with her son, coming to seek shelter with him. The moment he heard the news, he rushed off to the station to meet them. How could he possibly have been in the mood to turn in the marriage report to his unit? And me? I stayed home like a fool, joyfully preparing a full table of food to celebrate with him. I waited from day to night, only for him to tell me he had to work an overnight shift. Now that I'd lived through it all again, I understood he had lied. That night, he was clearly busy settling Sarah and her son into their new life. Staring at that marriage report, I felt it was laughably ironic. It no longer had any reason to exist. I struck a match and burned the ridiculous piece of paper. The crimson flames danced wildly, as if mocking the foolishness of my past life. Just then, the door creaked open. "Emily, did you make the chive and pork dumplings I asked for?" "Kevin's hungry," came Ethan's voice as he walked in, with Sarah and her son following right behind. He pinched his nose, frowning. "Emily, what are you burning? Aren't you worried about the smoke bothering Kevin?" I looked up coldly at the three of them, so close and cozy, like a real family. My tone was icy. "Nothing. Just some things that don't matter anymore." Ethan paused, seemingly caught off guard by my frosty attitude. He quickly regained his composure, sounding a little rushed. "Are the dumplings ready yet? Kevin had a very active day at preschool. He needs to eat more." He walked toward the kitchen, lifted the lid on the pot, and found it empty. He turned around, his voice sharper now. "Emily, why didn't you make the dumplings? Don't you know how hungry Kevin is?" Right on cue, Kevin started to wail. I'm hungry, Daddy, I want dumplings." "Daddy," I scoffed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "He called you Daddy?" Ethan and Sarah's faces went pale. Their eyes flickered with panic. Sarah immediately put on a pitiful expression, her voice delicate and apologetic. "Emily, please don't misunderstand. He's just a child. He blurts things out. I've corrected him several times already, but Ethan said there's no need to. He said Kevin is already like a son to him in his heart." Ethan, clearly worried I'd blame Sarah, jumped in to defend her. "Emily, can you not make a big deal out of it? It's just a title. I've already decided to take Kevin in as my godson. So what if he calls me Dad?" I sneered inwardly. My tone was distant. "You can have him call you whatever you want. It's none of my business." Ethan's face darkened, clearly embarrassed. He awkwardly changed the subject. "Emily, why didn't you cook after work? I told you last night." In the past, when I loved him, I would go along with whatever he said, cater to him in every way. But not anymore. That love was long gone. My heart was dead. All I had left for him was indifference. "I was tired today. I didn't feel like cooking," I said flatly. "If you want to eat something, make it yourself. Or are you going to starve just because I didn't cook?" They all stared at me in disbelief, as if they couldn't believe those words had come from my mouth. The old me would have silently endured, no matter how unfair the situation was. I would have smiled and carried the burden quietly. But not anymore. I wouldn't wrong myself for anyone ever again. I turned and walked toward my room, leaving them behind. "Emily," Ethan called after me. Then came Sarah's soft, sugary voice, like poison wrapped in honey. "Emily, I know you don't like me. It's okay. I won't come around anymore." Her eyes welled with tears, her face a picture of pitiful sweetness. Hugging Kevin tightly, she turned and walked out. Her footsteps, though light, carried a hint of deliberate frailty. I stared at her retreating figure and let out a cold laugh. In my past life, I had been completely fooled by that innocent, delicate act of hers. After Ethan Gu saw them out, he came back in, his face full of discontent as he looked at me. "Emily, what's wrong with you today? How could you treat our guests so rudely?" I lay motionless on the bed, not even bothering to lift an eyelid. He sighed, walked over to the bedside, and softened his tone. "Emily, there's nothing inappropriate between me and Sarah. Can you stop getting upset and misunderstanding things? Don't let your thoughts go to such dark places." Seeing that I still wouldn't even look at him, he seemed to grow anxious. He added, "I admit, I used to have feelings for Sarah. But once she married James, she became like a sister-in-law to me. What's between us now is purely comradely friendship." He paused, then continued, "I've told you more than once, if James hadn't sacrificed himself to save me, Sarah wouldn't have lost her husband, and Kevin wouldn't have lost his father. I owe them. They're just a poor mother and child, and I have a responsibility to take care of them. As a military wife, you should understand and support me." Sarah's husband, James Jeong, and Ethan had joined the army together as sworn brothers. They had both fallen in love with Sarah, a dancer in the cultural troupe. But Sarah chose James, who had a higher rank. On the day they married, Ethan finally introduced me, his fiancée from the countryside, arranged by our families long ago, to his fellow soldiers. No one expected that James would later die in a battle protecting Ethan. Ethan had been burdened with guilt ever since. But what did that have to do with me? If he owed someone a debt, he should repay it himself. Why drag me into it? In my past life, he gave Sarah things that belonged to me: my food ration coupons, the new comforter I had just sewn, the fabric I hadn't even cut yet. All of it, without asking me. When I cried and told him those were mine and I needed them too, he told me to be generous and kind-hearted. Otherwise, I wasn't fit to be a military wife. And now he dared say I was being petty and dirty-minded? How absurd. Everyone in the neighborhood could see how close Ethan and Sarah were. Too close. After work, he never came to pick up his own fiancée. Instead, he went straight to Sarah's workplace to walk her and her son home, laughing and chatting the whole way. To outsiders, they looked like a loving family of three. Ethan often brought them over for dinner. I cooked. I washed the dishes. As soon as they arrived, they sat down and ate. I was nothing but a free maid. Our neighbors warned me in private to watch out for Sarah Lynn, or I'd end up losing my marriage. But whatever. I didn't need to explain any of this to him anymore. I didn't want this man. He wasn't worth my time or energy. I looked up and said calmly, "I'm not angry. And I didn't misunderstand anything. I'm just really tired. I don't feel like moving." Ethan visibly relaxed when he heard that. A look of relief washed over his face like someone who had narrowly escaped disaster. "Emily, I'm glad you're not upset. If you're tired, then rest. I'll take care of dinner tonight," he said with unusual enthusiasm and turned toward the kitchen. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling in a daze, my mind already planning my trip to Beijing. The smell of food eventually wafted into the room, pulling me back to the present. "Emily, dinner's ready," Ethan called from outside the door. I got up and walked to the table. 2 simple dishes and a soup sat there, nothing fancy, but somehow they felt unfamiliar to me. In my previous life, we had sat at this same table too, just like this. But back then, my eyes were filled with affection when I looked at him. Now, all I felt was indifference. "Emily, I was thinking, maybe we could give the TV to Kevin to help keep him entertained. I mean, you and I don't really watch it much anyway," Ethan said cautiously. I nearly laughed out loud. In my past life, he didn't even ask me, he just carried the TV out of the house and gave it away. I had spent ages saving up for that television, and just like that, it was gone. We had a huge fight about it. Sarah Lynn had pretended to return the television out of politeness, but Ethan Gu felt embarrassed by the gesture. Using a routine deployment as an excuse, he turned and left, and didn't come back for an entire month. When I went to see him, he told me he was too busy and didn't have time for me. But I saw with my own eyes that he had time to walk through the streets with Sarah and her son, buying daily necessities. Because I cared about Ethan, I swallowed my pride first. I personally delivered the television to Sarah's home. Only then did Ethan return to ours. He praised me for being a good military wife, kind and generous. Thinking about it now, I gave myself a bitter, self-deprecating smile. I really wanted to slap my past self. "What are you smiling about, Emily?" Ethan asked, puzzled. "Nothing," I said, forcing the smile from my face. "You want to give away the television? Fine, but Sarah needs to pay me $100. His expression instantly darkened. I knew he was about to accuse me of being petty and lacking compassion again. "When we bought the TV, it cost $400, I continued before he could speak. "You paid $300, I paid $100, and I had to borrow that $100 from coworkers, bit by bit. I still haven't finished paying them back." I didn't stop there. I was going to use my food ration coupons as collateral, but you already gave those to Sarah, so now I have neither money nor coupons. Your salary's almost gone, too. What am I supposed to eat or drink until next payday?" Ethan was stunned into silence. It took him a long while to finally mutter, "I'll get you the $100 as soon as I can." I knew full well he would pay it himself. There was no way he'd ask Sarah for the money, but I didn't care how he got it. I just needed the cash in my hand. Train fare to Beijing, enrollment fees, basic living costs, $100 wasn't even close to enough. I had to find a way to earn more within the month. The next morning, Ethan hummed a cheerful tune as he carried the TV out of the house. As soon as he left, I began packing things up. Old books, test papers, a half-finished shoe sole I'd been stitching, and the scarf and hat I'd just finished knitting for Ethan. I sold them all to the junk dealer. It only brought in $20, but that small amount was the seed of my new life. That evening, Ethan handed me $100. I took the money, carefully counted it twice, and then tucked it into my pocket with satisfaction. "Emily, doesn't the place feel like something's missing?" he asked, glancing around the house. "Not really," I replied calmly, as if nothing had changed. "Our photo," he said, pointing to the empty frame on the wall. "Oh, I accidentally broke the frame. The photo got dirty too. I'll have it reframed some other time," I lied casually. The truth was, I had cut my half out of the photo. We weren't really a couple. That photo only made me feel sick. We were only halfway through dinner when Sarah burst into the house in a panic. "Ethan, there's a rat at my place. I'm scared." Kevin was crying too. "Please come help." She clung to Ethan's arm. He looked at me awkwardly, unsure what to do. I smiled. "Go on, they're just a mother and child. Of course they need your help." He stood up right away and left with her. Watching their backs as they walked away, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain. In fact, I found it all rather amusing. It's strange how light your heart feels when you stop caring about someone. In the days that followed, Ethan started handing over his military rations and benefits to Sarah. I didn't say a word. He bought her a new dress. I wasn't angry. He stood up for her, telling off someone who had bullied her, saying that he was the one she and her son could rely on. I didn't care. He took them to a photo studio to shoot the family portrait I wouldn't see until just before I died. I didn't interrupt them. I just stood outside and watched with a quiet smile, but my calmness made Ethan uneasy. "Emily, why don't you get upset anymore?" he asked one day. "Why should I?" I replied. "They're just a mother and child in need. You're helping them. That's what a good soldier and a good husband should do. And I'm a qualified military wife, aren't I?" He was speechless, as if wanting to say something but swallowing it back. After a long pause, he spoke again, this time in a conciliatory tone. "Emily, let's go to the general store together tomorrow. We're running low on household supplies." I glanced at the calendar. 15 days left. "I can't tomorrow," I told him. "I need to go back to my hometown. Your parents have been asking about us. You can't leave the base without permission, so I took time off to visit and stay with them for a few days." "Emily, it's so good to have you," he said, his eyes filled with what looked like sincere gratitude, but to me, it felt like nothing but irony. The truth was, I didn't want to go. But I had to. If I didn't go back, that accident would happen all over again, and once again, I wouldn't make it to Beijing. In my past life, I hadn't been able to attend college, not just because Ethan objected, but also because of another reason. His father had a sudden health crisis. And his mother, believing in some nonsense folk remedy passed around by old villagers, went up the mountain in a storm to gather herbs, and ended up breaking her leg. Back then, I thought of myself as part of the Gu family. The moment I heard the news, I panicked like a cat on a hot tin roof. Ethan hadn't even opened his mouth yet, but I had already packed my things to go take care of his parents. They say bone injuries take 100 days to heal. By the time I had nursed his mother back to health, Capital Medical had already started the semester. What university would accept a student who was 2 months late? Ethan and I were betrothed through an arrangement made by our grandfathers when they were drunk. The truth was, his parents had never truly approved of me. They thought Ethan was exceptional and deserved someone who could help his career, not some girl from the countryside with no status or connections. Even so, they never made things hard for me. When my parents passed away, the Gu family did help a lot. Because of that, I couldn't just stand by and watch Ethan's mother suffer. Besides, at that time, I hadn't yet completely severed ties with Ethan. Everyone still saw me as his wife. If his parents had an emergency and I didn't step up, people would talk behind my back. I arrived just in time. His father had only just started feeling unwell. I immediately contacted the village chief and had him taken to the hospital. His mother went with him. 3 days later, I brought them both home safely. Just to be sure there were no setbacks, I stayed for another week. During that week, I cooked, did laundry, chopped firewood, and kept the stove going. I even bought them a number of daily essentials. When I finally left, his parents thanked me over and over, calling me a good daughter-in-law. I smiled and said nothing, but in my heart I thought, being your daughter-in-law is too exhausting. This lifetime, I'm done with that role. 4 days. Just 4 more days until I could start my new life. I took the long-distance bus back. Another day passed. When I got home and opened the door, I froze in place. There was Ethan, holding Sarah Lynn tightly around the waist. Her arms were wrapped around his neck. The two of them were entangled like lovers caught in a moment of passion. Even though I had already lost all faith in Ethan after being reborn, seeing that scene still stirred a wave of anger in my chest. Especially when I saw the red dress Sarah was wearing, so bright it hurt my eyes. That dress. I remembered stopping in front of the store window, admiring it for a long time. Ethan had said he'd buy it for me on my birthday, and now it was on another woman. Humph. Whether it was the gift or the man, it didn't matter anymore. I no longer wanted either. My sudden return clearly disrupted their moment. Ethan's face flashed with panic as he clumsily pushed Sarah away. She lost her balance and nearly fell. But the look he gave me wasn't guilt. It held a touch of smugness, even challenge, as if he were claiming her in front of me. "Emily, you're back," Ethan said, his voice trembling slightly, eyes shifting, unable to meet mine. "It's not what it looks like, we were just," he rushed to explain but didn't know where to start. Then Sarah's delicate voice chimed in, soft and frail. "Emily, please don't misunderstand," Sarah said gently. "I accidentally stepped on a toy and almost fell. Ethan just caught me in time." As she spoke, she bent her head and smoothed the hem of her dress, putting on a fragile, pitiable expression. I stared blankly at their clumsy little performance, feeling nothing but amusement. "Okay, got it, no misunderstanding," I said, 6 flat words spoken without a trace of emotion. My reaction clearly surprised Ethan. He frowned deeply and looked at me, something like sorrow flickering in his eyes. He reached out to grab my arm as if he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. At that moment, a crisp child's voice broke the silence. "Mom, Dad, look at the boat I made." Kevin ran up to Sarah, beaming, holding a folded paper boat in his hand. My gaze dropped to the paper boat, and my pupils suddenly shrank. That sheet of paper, why did it look so much like my college acceptance letter? No, it couldn't be. My heart started pounding. A wave of panic and fury surged through me. I rushed forward and snatched the boat from Kevin's hands. He let out a loud wail, bursting into tears with snot and drool smeared all over his face. Ethan quickly scooped him up, patting his back gently. "Shh, Kevin, it's okay, don't cry." Sarah dabbed at his cheeks with a handkerchief, eyes brimming with concern as she shot me a sharp glare. "Emily, no matter how much you dislike me, don't take it out on Kevin. He's just a child. What did he ever do wrong?" But I wasn't listening. My focus was entirely on the paper in my hands. Their voices became a dull buzzing, like distant mosquitoes. I unfolded the paper boat with shaky hands, breathing hard. Thank God it wasn't my acceptance letter. Still, I couldn't relax. I bolted into my room, dropped to the floor, and crawled under the bed. After a few frantic seconds of digging around, I pulled out the envelope where I'd hidden my college admission notice. Seeing it intact, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. I tucked it into my shoulder bag and zipped it shut. Until the day I boarded the bus to Beijing, I had to make sure nothing happened to that letter. "Emily, go apologize to Kevin." Ethan's voice came through the door, low and full of blame. I turned around to see the 3 of them standing in the doorway. Kevin's face was streaked with tears, cheeks red and puffy, sniffling while waiting for my apology. But I felt no remorse. Even if it wasn't my acceptance letter he used for his boat, he had already torn up my workbook without asking. Was I not allowed to be angry? Before I could say anything, Kevin burst out. Bad auntie, I hate you. Daddy, tell her to get out of our house. She's mean. He screamed and clung to Ethan's neck. Sarah rushed to cover Kevin's mouth. He's just a kid, he doesn't know what he's saying, she said with a sweet, apologetic smile, like her earlier glare had never happened. Only then did I notice that my old room had been completely taken over by Sarah and her son. Bright red, peony print bed sheets covered the mattress. The vanity was crowded with face cream I'd always been too frugal to buy. Toys were scattered everywhere. In the living room, I'd seen her floral dress draped across the couch and her son's little sailor outfit tossed casually on a chair. But where were my things? I looked around. The cozy space I had once carefully arranged was now filled with the traces of strangers. Me, the person still labeled Ethan's fiancé, felt like an outsider, like someone who had shown up uninvited. A bitter sense of absurdity welled up inside me. Ethan's expression turned uneasy. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Emily, it's like this, he began nervously. A guy's been stalking Sarah lately. She's been scared, couldn't sleep at night. Since you were gone these past few days, I decided to let her and Kevin stay here temporarily. He added quickly, the guy's already been arrested. They'll move back out tomorrow. Then he hesitated for a beat before adding, tonight, why don't you just stay with me? It's not like it's a big deal. We're practically already married anyway. Because Ethan and I had never actually held a wedding, we weren't even staying in the same room. When Sarah Lynn heard what Ethan said, a flicker of annoyance flashed in her eyes. But she quickly replaced it with a smile. Emily, we're only staying one more night. Tomorrow I'll return the room to you. I promise I'll put everything back just the way it was. I knew she had no intention of leaving. In fact, I even suspected that the so-called stalker she mentioned had been hired by her. And then, right in the middle of talking, she suddenly burst into tears. If James hadn't died, Kevin and I wouldn't have to rely on Ethan for help. Emily, don't worry, we'll never trouble Ethan again. No matter how hard things get. Right on cue, another performance, perfectly calculated to make Ethan feel guilty. Sarah, don't say that, Ethan responded immediately. James was like a brother to me. You're my sister-in-law. He died saving me. Of course I have a responsibility to take care of you and Kevin. He turned to me. Emily, you know I've always had a kind heart. You understand me, don't you? I didn't, and I didn't want to. My things, I said coldly, cutting through the pretense. My eyes fixed on the items in Ethan's room. He led me there. Take a look. Nothing's missing, right? I scanned the room and gave a short nod. Everything's here. Really? He said, looking genuinely confused. It feels like there's less stuff in here. What happened to that shoe sole you were stitching? I was hoping you'd make me a new pair. So he noticed that? I almost laughed. I messed it up and threw it out. If you want shoes, buy them yourself, I replied. Emily. He frowned, his tone suddenly full of hurt. You don't smile like you used to. I'm just tired, I said flatly. He sighed and changed the subject. How are my parents doing? They're fine. Just said they miss you, I answered without emotion. I miss them too, he said with a smile, a little awkward. When things settle down at the base, let's go visit them together. You know, their biggest wish is to have a grandchild. We should work on fulfilling that. A grandchild? Ha! In my past life, I'd lost my baby in a tragic accident and damaged my health. I couldn't have children. In this life, if someone wanted to give them a grandchild, they could look to Sarah Lynn. Emily, I have something for you, Ethan said, pulling me gently to sit on the bed. He opened a drawer and took out 2 movie tickets. You've always wanted to see a movie, right? The day after tomorrow is your birthday. Let's go together. His voice was soft, his eyes hopeful, like he was trying to win me over. Back then, I used to dream of doing something as simple and sweet as going to a movie with him, buying a couple sodas, holding hands like normal couples did. But he always said he was too busy, that he didn't have time. We never once saw a movie together. Now, after everything, he suddenly took the initiative to buy tickets. It was almost laughable. 3 days from now would be my last day here. So I said, sure, let's go. Just to grant the wish of that past version of me, the girl who had once loved him so completely. The next day, after Ethan left for the base, Sarah and her son slowly, reluctantly began packing. Mommy, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go, Kevin wailed, clinging to Sarah's leg. This is Daddy's house. That means it's our house. I don't want to go. Shh, Kevin, be good, Sarah said soothingly, patting his head. Mommy will bring you back here soon, and next time, no one will be able to kick us out. Unfortunately for her, I happened to be standing right at the doorway when she said that. She turned and saw me, a flicker of panic crossing her face before she quickly recovered her composure. The fake sweetness disappeared as she looked at me with open provocation. Bookmark, go back. Don't get too smug, Emily, she said. Ethan's only with you because he's honoring a promise to his elders. The one he truly loves is me. I smiled. Are you sure about that? Sarah faltered for a second. I told a lie, my voice calm but tinged with a subtle trace of satisfaction that was hard to detect. Sarah Lynn's expression shifted slightly. I wasn't finished. Not only that, I continued, he even bought 2 movie tickets. He's taking me to see Romance on Lushan Mountain the night after tomorrow. That movie was a sensation in the 80s, an iconic love story, nearly impossible to get tickets for. So many people wanted to see it and couldn't. I knew Sarah must have been dying to go. Sure enough, I caught a flicker of jealousy in her eyes. But she quickly stiffened her voice and said, "What's so great about a movie? Total waste of money." I shrugged, smiled, and let it go. She tugged on Kevin and started packing faster. After dragging their feet all morning, the 2 of them finally cleared out their things. Not long after, I went out too, to buy a train ticket. I booked the earliest departure available. I also bought a good amount of food. After all, the train ride from here to Beijing would take nearly 4 days and 3 nights. Soon, it was the day Ethan had promised to take me to the movies. Before the official end of the workday, he was already back from the base, riding his bike with a cardboard box tied to the back seat. "Emily, I'm back," he called from a distance. I stood at the door watching him approach, my heart an odd mixture of emotions. "What's that?" I asked, pointing at the box on his bike. "A gift for you," he said, parking the bike and pulling out a cassette tape. "Teresa Teng's music. I know you ladies love her songs. Honestly, I think they're pretty good too." He grinned as he handed it to me. I held the tape, my brow slightly furrowed. The one who liked Teresa Teng was Sarah Lynn. My favorite singer had always been Li Gaiyi, but Ethan didn't know that. He had never known what I liked or what I didn't. All the affection he thought he was giving me was based on what he assumed all women liked. What Sarah liked, he assumed I must like too. "Come on, let's eat," he said, taking my hand. We went to the state-run restaurant. He ordered a bowl of longevity noodles and a few of my hometown dishes. "From now on, every year on your birthday, we'll eat out like this," he said. I quietly ate the noodles without replying. He'd said the exact same thing in my past life too. But after that, he never once spent a birthday with me. After dinner, we walked to the theater. The movie would start in 10 minutes. Looking around at the young couples with their popcorn and snacks, Ethan asked, "Want some sweet popcorn?" I shook my head, but he still went to buy some. Just as he returned with the bag of popcorn, Sarah Lynn appeared out of nowhere. She rushed up and grabbed his hand, her face pale and panicked. "Ethan, Kevin, he's got a high fever. He's burning up. Can you take us to the military hospital?" she cried, her voice on the verge of breaking. Ethan's brow furrowed instantly, worry flooding his face. "Afraid I'd try to stop him," Sarah added tearfully. "I'm just a poor widow. If anything happens to my son, I won't make it. Please." Her face was streaked with tears like a flower battered by rain. Ethan looked at me, torn. He still had the movie tickets in his hand, but it was like they weighed 1,000 pounds now. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said. "It's okay. Kevin's health comes first. Go," I said with a smile, sounding as calm as if none of this had anything to do with me. "Take 1 ticket. You go in first," he said quickly, trying to ease his guilt. "I'll leave the other one at the front desk. Once I drop them off at the hospital, I'll come right back." I took the ticket, nodded silently. Then Ethan turned and followed Sarah away. But I knew, once he left with her, she wouldn't let him come back easily. I stood there watching his back disappear into the crowd. I said softly, "Goodbye, Ethan." Then I returned home, pulled out the suitcase I had packed days ago, and left for a small hotel near the train station. That night, I slept soundly. I woke at 5 a.m., washed up, had a simple breakfast, and made my way to the station. After passing the ticket checkpoint, I boarded the train headed for Beijing. As the train pulled out, the long, echoing whistle sounded again and again, like a reminder whispering to me, "Emily Chen, your new life is about to begin." When I arrived at Capital Medical University, everything went smoothly. I enrolled without issue, moved into my dorm, and began my new life. I had chosen pharmaceutical research as my major. Nearly every hour of my day was devoted to lectures and lab work. Before I knew it, half a year had passed. I thought I'd never see Ethan Gu again. But one day, out of nowhere, he appeared in front of my dorm. He looked exhausted, worn out, nothing like the man I once knew. His head and arm were wrapped in bandages. Clearly, his injuries hadn't fully healed. "What happened to him?" "Emily," he called my name, his voice shaking with emotion. He staggered toward me, his steps unstable. "Why? Why did you leave without saying anything?" he asked, like a child who'd been abandoned. "I searched for you for so long." He lowered his head, voice choked. "I had to ask your teachers to find out you were admitted to Capital Medical. And then," I said coldly, "why didn't you tell me? I would have celebrated with you," he said. "Celebrate?" I gave a humorless laugh. He couldn't understand what I found so funny. He continued, "I wanted to come to Beijing right away to see you, but there was an emergency assignment from the base. I had to carry out the mission, and I got injured. I couldn't get out of bed for months. As soon as I could walk, the first thing I did was come here." His eyes were red with emotion. I looked at him, but felt nothing, no anger, no sorrow, no affection. "You should leave. There's nothing between us," I said firmly. "That's not true," he said, growing agitated. "We're husband and wife, you're my wife." I let out a cold laugh. "Do we have a marriage certificate?" He froze, at a loss for words. Then he stammered, I lost the marriage registration form. But I'll submit another one to the unit. Then we'll go register our marriage officially at the civil office." "I'm not going back with you," I said, my voice unshakable. "And I won't marry you. Go back. Go live your life with Sarah and Kevin." At the mention of Sarah Lynn's name, his expression darkened. "Emily, why do you keep misunderstanding my relationship with Sarah?" he said, flustered. "I only feel responsible for them. That's all. I never wanted to marry anyone but you. This has nothing to do with her." I cut him off. "All I want is to study hard and serve my country in the field of medicine, not to become someone's wife." He stood there stunned. You have such noble goals?" "I always did," I replied. "You just assumed I was born to orbit around your life, as if I had nothing else to live for." "No, I didn't mean it like that," he said, now panicking. "If you don't want to come back and get married, I'll come to Beijing. I'll request a transfer to the base here and we'll—" "Enough, Ethan," I interrupted. "I don't want to marry you, not because of anyone else, simply because I don't love you anymore. And I don't ever want you in my life again." He stood there frozen for a long time before his lips finally moved. "That can't be. Emily, I don't believe you. You're lying to me." "I'm not. Believe it or don't, it makes no difference to me." I didn't want to waste another breath arguing. I turned and walked back toward my dorm. Behind me, he still refused to give up. "Emily, wait for me," he shouted. "I swear I'll get transferred to Beijing." That oath he shouted so confidently, he never fulfilled it. Ethan Gu never came to Beijing again, and that was for the best. Without him, my life was calmer, my studies more focused. But later, by chance, I overheard some things about him from a fellow townsman. Ethan Gu was promoted after successfully completing that mission. He received a commendation and actively applied to be transferred to Beijing. The organization approved the request. When Sarah Lynn found out, she hugged her son and begged Ethan in tears not to leave. For the first time, Ethan rejected her plea. He also formally corrected Kevin's way of addressing him. From now on, he was to call him Uncle Ethan, nothing more. Ethan promised that he would contribute part of his monthly salary to help raise Kevin, but that would be the extent of it. Sarah agreed. Just before Ethan was set to leave for Beijing, she said she wanted to cook him a farewell meal. She made chive dumplings and laced them with drugs. They ended up sleeping together. Afterwards, Sarah threatened him. If he didn't marry her, she'd jump into the river with the child. The incident caused a massive scandal. When the military learned of it, Ethan was harshly reprimanded. His transfer to Beijing was revoked, and he was demoted 2 ranks. Only then did Ethan finally see Sarah's true colors. In the end, he had no choice but to marry her. When I heard all of this, I was silent for a moment. In my previous life, he had drained the very essence of my being for the sake of Sarah and her son. In this life, he was still ensnared by her, eventually marrying her after all. Maybe this was just their fate. I felt nothing. It was merely gossip I happened to hear over dinner. Compared to Ethan's misfortunes, I cared far more about my lab data. I closed my research log and walked to the lab's window. Beijing's winter was still dry and biting cold, but my heart was full of hope and passion. I would continue my research to unlock the mysteries of life and tackle the world's most challenging medical problems. That was the life I truly wanted. The year I graduated with my master's degree, my advisor asked me if I'd like to join a state-organized pharmaceutical research initiative based in a remote region. The goal was to develop drugs to treat serious diseases and prolong human life. It was a massive project benefiting all of humankind. Being invited was a great honor. Without hesitation, I said yes. Once I entered the research base, my world became entirely about science. My team and I worked with focus and unity. Over 30 years, we published countless authoritative medical papers and developed more than 100 drugs that improved human health. We received national recognition and praise from around the world. 3 decades passed. The world changed. Our country flourished and was transformed. One day, the leaders of my hometown invited me to return and deliver a speech. When I arrived, I was overwhelmed by the changes. The muddy mountain roads were now paved highways. The crumbling clay houses had become modern little villas. Nearly every home had a car parked in front. My heart was filled with emotion. It had taken the tireless efforts and selfless dedication of so many for this country to lift itself from poverty to prosperity. After touring my hometown, I was preparing to return to the institute to continue my work. But just before I left, the village chief approached me hesitantly. "Comrade Emily Chen, there's someone who insists on seeing you. He says he knows you, and he must speak with you, just once," the chief said, rubbing his hands with a look of unease. I nodded. "All right, I'll see him." That man approached slowly, leaning heavily on a cane. His skin was dark, lined with deep wrinkles. His clothes were worn and stained. When he looked at me, his eyes were filled with a complex emotion. Something about him felt deeply familiar, yet I couldn't quite place him. He stopped in front of me, trembling, and his cloudy eyes shimmered with tears. "Emily, you did it. You've done great things for our country," he said in a hoarse, low voice. And in that instant I knew exactly who he was. Ethan Gu, the proud young man he once was, now reduced to a frail, aging figure at the end of his road. My heart was a tangled mess of feelings. Are you all right?" I asked. "What about Sarah and Kevin?" He gave a bitter smile, one that seemed to carry all the weight of the years. It was the kind of smile you'd see on the last leaf clinging to a dying tree. "Sarah, she's gone." "Gone," he said. "Gone where?" I asked. He shook his head, his eyes hollow. "I don't know. She ran off with another man. She never came back." My heart sank sharply. "And Kevin?" I asked. His smile twisted with even deeper bitterness. Murky tears slid down the deeply lined creases of his face. "Kevin's gone too." I drew in a sharp breath, staring at him in disbelief. "What? What do you mean?" He closed his eyes in pain, inhaling deeply as if trying to suck all the sorrow into his lungs. He got mixed up with the wrong crowd, ended up beaten to death," he finally said. I never imagined that the little boy so carefully raised by his mother would end up walking such a tragic path. "How could this happen?" I murmured, dazed. Ethan slowly opened his eyes. They were filled with regret and self-blame. "It was my fault. I didn't raise him right." His voice trembled as he haltingly recounted everything that had happened over the years. Even though he and Sarah Lynn got married, their life together was miserable. Sarah would start arguments over the smallest things. Eventually, Ethan moved into the military barracks just to avoid her. Then, on another mission, he was injured again. This time severely. His leg was crippled, and he was honorably discharged, unable to continue serving. Sarah took his retirement money and tried investing it. She lost everything. Kevin, rebellious and lost during his adolescence, got involved in organized crime. In the end, he was beaten to death. Sarah had a breakdown. She blamed Ethan for not being able to avenge their son, took what little money was left, and ran off with another man. No one's heard from her since. When he finished, I felt a deep, quiet sigh rise within me. Looking at the man before me now, I felt no hatred, only profound sympathy. "Things will get better," I said softly. "Our country doesn't abandon its people." He looked at me with a complicated gaze, his expression unreadable. It was a long moment before he finally said, "Emily, thank you." I smiled gently and turned to leave, but he suddenly called out again, his voice trembling. "Emily, I'm sorry." I turned back. "If it weren't for me," he said, "in our previous life, you would have achieved greatness long ago." I froze, staring at him in shock. Ethan wiped a hand across his cloudy eyes and gave a slow, firm nod. "That's right," he said. "I was reborn too." His voice was hoarse and low, as if it were coming from far away. "That last mission, I was gravely injured. I was unconscious for a long time." He paused, searching for the words. "While I was unconscious, I saw everything." My heart skipped a beat. A strange, indescribable feeling crept over me. I saw the joy on your face when you got your college acceptance letter, and how selfish I was, making you give up your dream. His voice cracked with remorse. "I saw what Sarah and Kevin did to you after I died." He continued, voice choking again. Tears rolled down his deeply weathered cheeks. They tried to kick you out," he said, eyes shutting tightly as if trying to block out the painful image. My breath grew shallow. It was like I had returned to that moment of utter despair. "I saw you collapse from a heart attack," he whispered. His voice trembled, thick with guilt. That was when I realized how terribly wrong I'd been. He opened his eyes again. They were filled with anguish and regret. "I always believed that once a woman married a man, her role was to support him no matter what." He let out a bitter laugh at himself. "But I never once thought about how you felt, what you wanted. I put all my trust in Sarah and Kevin," he said, his voice heavy with powerlessness and despair. "And in the end, I raised two ungrateful, heartless people with my own hands." I listened quietly, a storm of mixed emotions churning in my heart. "When I woke up," he said after a pause, "I really wanted to find you. I wanted to tell you." He hesitated again, a trace of doubt lingering in his voice. "Tell you that the only person I've ever truly loved was you." My heart gave a sharp jolt, but quickly returned to calm. "I only ever felt responsibility towards Sarah and Kevin," he added firmly, as if needing to clarify. "But I didn't have the courage to face you," he said, bowing his head like a child who had done something wrong. "Do you hate me?" he asked, lifting his head to look at me. His eyes were filled with anxiety and fear of my answer. I looked at him, this man who had once been a proud, spirited youth, now aged into someone weathered by time and regret. I shook my head. "No, I stopped hating you a long time ago," I said gently. "And you don't need to drown in remorse for the past anymore. We were just two people who weren't meant to be," I said calmly. "But my life has been fulfilling. It's had meaning." I looked off into the distance, my voice resolute. "For the rest of my days, I will continue to contribute to my country in every way I can." He nodded, choking back his emotions, his eyes glistening with tears. I boarded the official car that had been arranged for me. As I watched my hometown fade into the distance, a sense of deep peace filled my heart. My life was still moving forward.